It's always with some trepidation when I'm talking with you, because we know that you don't pull punches. But one of the things that amaze me is when if you go to a homicide scene and you see people stand up and right from the start they go, look, we've got no witnesses in this matter, we've got no CCTV, and talking like that. I'm thinking, what are you doing? Ethnically based crime groups.
Well, mate, if it looks like a duck, it's a duck. Like, for God's sake. Like, I'm sick to hear. Again, this is people just hiding their heads in the sand.
Welcome to another episode of I Catch Killers. As you know, I enjoy speaking with old cops, so I'm excited about today's guest. This person was a larger-than-life character in the police who I looked up to throughout my career. We didn't always agree, and sometimes we had differing opinions. I never had an issue with that because I knew I was talking to a real detective, someone who paid his dues, and so I valued his opinion. I respected today's guest for his toughness and his passion. Looking at him today, he still looks tough, and I don't think people like him ever lose their passion. There's no bullshit about this bloke. He says what he thinks and does what he believes is right. In an organisation like the New South Wales Police, that doesn't always make you popular. Like a lot of great police who have tried to make a difference, he had his detractors. Perhaps those people were threatened by his profile and reputation. In policing, it's one thing being tough, but you've also got to have the brains to go with it, which today's guest does. He knew his role as a senior officer was to support the lower ranks so they could do their job, which was to lock up the bad guys. In his 36 years in police, he made a huge impact, changing the way police dealt with gangs and organised crime, but that's just part of his amazing career. He rose to the rank of Assistant Commissioner before his retirement. When he walked away from police, we lost a real character. He was dedicated to putting away the bad guys, and he didn't play politics. It's a shame there's not more senior police like him. Ken Slasher McKay, welcome to I Catch Killers.
Hello, mate. How are you going?
Very good, very good. Long introduction, but it's been a long career for you.
Yeah, it was a long and rewarding career. I always often say it's the best fun you can have with your clothes on. It's
yeah.
It is a lifestyle. It's a sport.
Yeah.
You'd understand. Chasing crooks is a sport.
Yep.
In all the many and varied ways in which you sort of do that. It's great fun.
Well, I think that's the way I describe policing. Every day was exciting coming to work. You didn't know what was going to happen.
Oh, definitely not. No.
It's for a job, like people ask me, would you join the police? And even the way my career ended, I'd still say 100%. I think it's a fantastic job. And there's so many different things you can do in policing too, isn't there?
Well, yeah, massive, wide variety.
Yeah.
And that is growing,
Yeah.
Because we tend to forced to follow the trends that organised criminals set.
Yeah.
And in that in itself, takes a great deal of flexibility for the policing, and new initiatives have to be put in place. New ways of doing business have to be put in place. You just can't sit on your hands and hope that the crooks are going to come to you.
Yeah.
It's one of the sort of difficult things I saw in the police was their lack of ability to change quickly enough.
Yeah. Well, we've got to be one step ahead of the crooks.
Well, that's
ideally,
right. Yeah. Rather, it'd be nice to be in front for a change.
Yeah.
But again, that's a difficult thing to achieve. But by the same time, you have to be able to be flexible there and be able to adjust really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Rather than just sit there talking about it, just do it.
Yeah.
And if laws or legislation gets in your way, you've got to get up and change it very quickly.
I'm a big believer in that, and I know battles that you've had getting legislation changed, and I've done the same thing. I've battled through my career. I'd say if something's not working, it needs to be changed, and there seems to be this, but you can't because we've always done it this way.
I'll give you an example, and I've seen it a number of times, where you get requests from, say, Premier, from Police Minister to put up a submission as to how we could change legislation to make policing more efficient and effective, and then you spend lengthy amounts of time with your staff and getting ideas, and you put a paper together and you give it to the Premier or the Minister, whoever asked for it, and then they send it through the AGs, and then they says, no.
Yeah.
And, you get a bit disillusioned where I said to one of the Premiers, I said, mate, don't you run the show? He goes, no.
Yeah.
Those people in there they're only across the hall,
Yeah.
AG's department.
Yeah.
So I think, in terms of governments, they need to get their act together too to be able to become more flexible in terms of crime
They
investigation.
definitely wield some power, the judicial
Yeah, it was just amazing how they just said a blank no.
Yeah.
So all that was just a massive waste of time. And
I've seen that. I've seen that a lot, and that's the resistance you find. I always think there should be a good separation of powers or autonomy between policing, the courts, and the politics. I think that works the system better.
Well, I think we have more than enough, watchdogs out there to ensure that each of those areas are doing the right thing, and a separation of powers. But I think that went out about, probably in the 80s, that it became very much dissolved, where government actually started sticking their bib into policing.
Well, whenever you're seeing the police minister standing beside the commissioner, and
Well, when you ever see the police minister talking first, standing beside the commissioner, and that's really, you're really in trouble,
Yeah. Okay. Well, now, your career. First of all, with the chat, it's always with some trepidation when I'm talking with you, because we know that you don't pull punches. And I always I liked it during the career when I know you were going to speak to the media. And it was always, I know senior police were nervous, and other people were just fascinated by what you're about to say. But I think you were sold a little bit short, that people were thinking, no, you're just being controversial. No, you're actually saying what needed to be said quite often, the unspoken truth of what needed to be said.
Well, I always had a great belief that no one ever got into trouble from telling the truth.
Yeah.
And if you got in trouble for telling the truth, well, that's someone else's issue, I think I had the thoughts that the members of the public who we represented all those years require the truth, and they love the truth. I often see police interviews, where on the media where it's just very like a rote learning sort of issue, and they're telling a whole lot of stuff. They're telling a whole lot of stuff but not saying anything.
Yeah.
And the public aren't getting any confidence from that. So I think if you just tell it straight and tell it in a very plain language that everyone can understand, I don't think the listeners are left in no doubt as to where the police force stands on a certain issue.
Okay. And on that, because some of the things that you said, and there was one quote that you were talking about a particular gang. And they give up their mother and they give up other people because of their internal fortitude is very low. Now, some people might say, well, that's a bit antagonistic or a bit confrontational. But when you are speaking to the media, you're speaking to the person that you're targeting. I always thought, whenever I was speaking on the media about a police-related matter, I was speaking to the crook that I was after. That was the message I wanted to get out. I look a bit deeper at that. People might say, oh, well, you shouldn't have said that. It's not correct. How can you identify a group of people like that? But you were speaking to that group of people.
Yeah, the fact is, everything I've said in that is fact.
Yeah.
Okay. They're just cowardly bastards, and they would give up their mother. Yeah. And I can even tell you stories at Middle Eastern organised crime where we had sets of brothers, 2 brothers or 3 brothers from separate families.
Right.
Yep. No, say 2 brothers and 3, all giving up each other. Yeah. Registered informants.
Yeah.
Like, what's that about? And so that's a fact that they would give up their mother. But also it gives us that you can utilise the media to really give a dig into the ribs of organised crime by speaking in such a fashion. They know that you're talking. You want to sort of get them as a commander and an organised crime operative. You want to get the attention of the group you're working on. You want them to focus on you.
Yeah. And
while they're focusing on you, they're not focusing on doing damage or injury to members of the public.
I understood that, and I found that when I worked gang squad, but also majority of my career in homicide, as you know. But you've got to make it personal sometimes. Put the pressure on the person you're targeting, and take it away from just this bland comment that's often made by police. One of the things that amaze me is when if you go to a homicide scene and you see people stand up and right from the start they go, look, we've got no witnesses in this matter, we've got no CCTV, and talking like that. I'm thinking, what are you doing? You never say that. You say, we're coming after you. We're not going to tell you what we've got, and make it hard. There's a message every time you speak to the media.
Yeah, I think a lot of the modern policing, you see the police leadership tend to sort of not get up there. You really, in an organised crime sense and higher level crime, or any sort of crime, or even a large scale, a street crime.
Yeah.
You want the offenders to be really looking out for someone.
Yeah.
Not someone that's up in the darkness and just a voice on the newspaper or just in print or something like that. The police need to say, throw someone up there that's going to say, well, I'm going to get you.
Well,
it's one of those.
And that's what I learnt coming through the police. You'd have people with some reputations, and even before I joined the cops, that bloke's talking, okay, these crooks are in trouble. There's someone's coming after them. And you need a figurehead.
Well, yeah, but you've got to back that up by having the ability and putting wonderful people around you to go and target and tell these blokes up. You know.
And that's that's been a big thing. You've always talked, and I know your reputation was someone that always built a good team around them. That was something that was important to you.
I went through the whole of the policing. I suppose the last 20 years I was in leadership positions. And I suppose in that last 20 years I didn't personally do an investigation, because that wasn't my job. But I had significant experience. I thought I was always innovative, But I think my greatest ability was to identify really good people in the police force, really good investigators, and get them around me at all the different levels, from a junior level to right up to, the people directly under my command, So it's that was one of the greatest things I reckon I was able to achieve. And then when you do that, you can't just sit back on sit on the lounge and relax. You've really got to be out there with them. Yeah. I found it. I probably went to most jobs personally with the staff, whether it doesn't matter how violent or dangerous they were. You always come up. Think of new ideas. And I used to think of new ideas were absolute rubbish just to get the feedback from the staff who would tell me that was rubbish, But I'll say, well, then you could just force them to say, well, where's your idea, Stuart?
Challenge them.
Yeah, where's your idea?
Well, sometimes, you've mentioned it, like thinking outside the square.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, because the criminals keep changing.
Yeah,
the different crimes change. The way they operate changes. Who they operate upon, where they operate, all those sort of things. It's a constant change. So you've got to be constantly moving around the field.
And you've called it the contact sport. That's how I often describe policing. It is a contact sport.
Oh, of course it is. It's very dangerous. It's dangerous. You're going to come into contact with horrible, horrible people. That's the reality of it.
And you need to take the risk. You balance the risk out with what you're looking for, but you need to take risks sometimes and push the envelope. And that's not breaking laws I'm talking here. I mean just something innovative and trying things.
Yeah, of course. You have to be able to take the risks.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you achieve very, very little or nothing. Everything's a risk. I'm with you on that. If you find that stuff's in your way, change. If legislation's in your way, get it changed. I'm not saying break any rules. You don't. They operate on a pretty good set of rules, but you've really got to push the boundary. Yeah. Because you can't be on the rugby field here if you're the only one playing by the rules. You get yourself killed. Like it's crazy. Yeah. So you have to sort of have the rules and manipulate the rules to your own benefit. But if the rules are too restrictive, you've got to be at the forefront of having them change, and that's in change of legislation, police policy, and the like. And changing mindsets of people working for you. Yep. To get them along on the ride.
Yeah, I do know. Let's talk. We've sort of got to what you've learnt at the tail end of your career. Why did you join the police in the first place?
Well, my dad was in the police. He was at the water police. He went from the Navy to the water police. So I had a bit of we often would go into the water police there, on night shift and different days and run around on police boats. And I got the feeling for the police, and I knew a whole lot of his friends. Yeah. I got introduced, to mates of his at the coroner's court and, just through different jobs they were doing. I was only very, very young, probably. I just had that feel for it. And I wanted to do it. I left school, got a number of offers at uni and doing different things. And it just didn't interest me. And I sort of waited till I was 19 and joined the police, So,
it's hard if you're looking at policing and you've got offers to do other stuff. It just doesn't seem to catch the excitement. of
that's right. I think one was I suppose the second place was I got a cadetship as a cadet officer in the Australian Maritime.
Yeah,
and but I had a girlfriend back then. I didn't want to leave home, so that was so the cops. Yeah,
the police won because of love.
Yeah.
Okay. Where were you first stationed?
Campsie, 77. Yeah.
How was that? Tell us about your experience as a young Ken McKay going out on the beat for the first time.
We did a training course of 10 weeks at the academy at Redfern. I think we did a week driving course and off we went. You went to different places. They were quite. The structure of the police force was quite different then. The whole police station, I think, was under an inspector and a couple of senior sergeants and a whole big group of very, very senior police. Well, not senior when I say, but been in the police force a long, long time.
Yeah.
And this was just in the general duties world. It was different. It was a different culture, a different.
Society was different then too.
Well, the rules were different. Yeah, society was different. Yeah, it was a wonderful time working with these older senior people. Showing you the ropes. Some ropes you kept going, and some you disregarded immediately. I remember my first shift. I get to drive the police truck. 13-1 or something it wasn't, and 13 Division number 1 truck and. We went straight from the police station to it was Christmas time. We got sworn in around the December, and we supplied the light show for the local panel beaters Christmas party. So we sat there, spent most of the shift there. But a great experience, and I always remember the first fellow I locked up, Sid Sully. And we we vagged him, which was we charged him with vagrancy. It was a big cock a hooch.
Yeah.
But all those little things. I gave you a grounding. I only lasted a little while in uniform because I was threatened to be sent to the Four Wheels department to drive the bosses around. Yeah,
that's something you tried to avoid.
Yeah. And luckily enough, my dad was in the Navy with the boss of the detectives at number 13 Division, camps here. So we backdated an application, and to go into plain clothes. And I was in plain clothes when I went to secondary training.
All right.
So,
that's very.
Well, it was after did 12 months in probation and then had to go to secondary training back at the academy. So I had to dust off the uniform and put that back on. But working as a very young plain clothes constable with again, there was different ranks around at that time, the different rank structures, because every detective at Campsie Detective had masses of experience, The boss there was a senior sergeant and had a hell of a lot of detective sergeants, and there seemed to be a hell of a lot of detective senior constables.
And I'll set the scene for my first stint in detectives, and the mill room was full of smoke and playing cards at lunchtime. That was and that was
euchre. That's where you learned to play euchre.
That was virtually the environment you walked into. And when I was a young uniform cop, you'd go in with a job and you'd have your P40 or whatever it was to hand to the detectives. Oh, could you have a look at this? And they'd be sitting there with smoke hanging out of their mouths, playing cards, and you couldn't get out of there quick enough. It was an intimidating place to start with, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Well, it was actually intimidating when you first went to work there. They trotted me up and said, "You're not," I turned up in a bit of plain clothes and that wasn't suitable. I remember them dragging me up to Campsie, up to Reuben F. Scarf, and I'd come back in a safari suit, and I don't know what was more embarrassing, the safari suit or getting dragged up there and dressed like a child,
Yeah, it was. But if you found the right person to work with, it was you're like a sponge. And I couldn't believe some of the people I worked with, what I could learn from them, the skills that they had as detectives.
I still remember them, like Jock Scullion and Neil Colfax and the Waters brothers and all those people, that they were just masses of knowledge, and then I went in plain clothes, over worked with blokes like Clary Lemmy and Laurie Marning and all those, all detective sergeants. And there were, just seemed to be under the previous structure of the policing environment, a lot of senior police were happy to stay in the one spot long enough to pass all the knowledge on to the younger people coming through. Now you struggle to find a senior experienced person in a police station. They all seem so young. And
is that because we're getting old, or is it really it has changed?
I think no, it has changed. now you have an environment where a lot of the police are constantly zigging and zagging to get promoted. And that might be because of the economics of the world, You've got to make more money.
It doesn't. When you're talking of it, it brings my memories back to those early days in detectives, and that senior sergeant has been a detective for 25 years. And
plus some,
knew everyone, knew everything that could be done, couldn't be done, and just a wealth of experience. And you could take a brief to them, and they could look at it for a minute, then identify things that, have you thought of this, thought of that? And you're thinking, how did they pick that up? But that's just experience that seems to have gone out. Because I think in a detective's office, you have one good detective sergeant that can make a world of difference. They can create a culture that,
Oh, exactly right, yeah.
Really.
I remember back in the day there, whereas, you just learned, you sucked up so much knowledge from these people.
Yeah.
And they were always there, to say, this is the right way to do it, the wrong way to do it, and how you do it. And I don't think you see that now. You see young people, you walk into a police station now, just two young people together, and it's sort of like,
I feel sorry for
deer in the headlights.
Because it is a challenging job. And to have that experience that guide you where you're going to make a complete fool of yourself. Yeah. But having that experience. I got set up by one of my first partners in plain clothes, Jim Williams, that we were on the afternoon shift, and we had a court matter the next day. And he would normally, if we were a court matter, you remember the days where you had to learn your statement verbatim. So you got a 4-page statement, you've got to learn it verbatim. And he's gone, oh, don't worry about it, it's right. And we went out and we had a meal, and I'm thinking, why aren't you stressed about this court matter? And he said, don't worry about it. And we turn up for court the next day. I'm thinking, well, I'll trust him. And he said, how as a junior officer, you go in after, the lead person goes in, takes the shine off the ball, so to speak, and you come in and give the evidence after. He said, I'm not going in today, you go in first. I'm thinking, this is a bit strange. I've gone in the court, and every question I didn't want to be asked was asked. I've just got ripped to pieces. I couldn't get out of there quick enough. And when I got out of there, I thought, I don't have a career in plain clothes. I wasn't lying. I was just confused. I was baffled. I was just humiliated. And after I got out of the court, Jim said, how'd you go? And I said, I don't know if this is for me, Jim, like a just puddle of sweat from the pressure. And then he introduced me to his mate, who was a defence barrister. It was only a defence solicitor. It was only a break and enter or whatever. And Jim set me up to see how I'd perform under pressure and teach me a lesson, never go into court underprepared. And I remember that to the day I retired. Yeah. And lessons like that, you can't beat them.
No, but the changes in the police, it might get back to a little bit. I always remember first joining the police and then seeing that I wanted to have a career in plain clothes. I thought, well, right, if I do my whole best and I catch a few breaks and I, try my hardest, I reckon I'm going to get by the end of my career. After about 40 years, I reckon I'll be a detective inspector. And that was a realistic way of looking at life.
Where you'd aspire to,
if you wanted to. But how the organisation changed.
Yeah, it did, and I think it's devalued the experience. Like I always push the experience. If someone's been there, done that, you can't bypass the experience.
But I think that's where we get back to the innovative part of the lack of innovation within the police force. Now, there's got to be a way of compensating or saying to a detective senior constable who's a high performer, who wants to do that sort of work for the rest of his days, of compensating that person. So he gets an increase in wages, but I know there's something in place there in terms of leading senior constables and blah, blah, but we have to have a way to keep people and they're not even running by their own demographics in an ageing society, trying to push their retirement age higher. What you're going to have, if you don't do something about it, you're going to have a whole lot of grey-haired old coppers like me out the back because you can't put them out the front because they're too old, They can't be sending him off to jobs because a bloke 65, 70 years of age, he's past it.
No,
he's not running on the field, mate.
You can't.
But if you don't have something for them and compensate them for them, so it takes a whole lot of innovation to deal with that issue.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the people just want to go up to the top. You've got all these people sitting at the top as inspectors and superintendents and the like. Well, there's a whole mishmash of them up there. I don't know what they actually do.
Well, you're not going to get any answers from me because I don't know what they do either. But
that's a disappointment, yeah.
I think there would have been, I thought a simple way of, because what I would see, people that were on this career trajectory just for promotion, not for experience, just they get to, senior constable. When can I become a sergeant? They get the sergeant. When can I become a senior sergeant? When can I become an inspector, chief inspector? They just try to climb the ladder. And I think if you put, 5 years on each rank, just to slow it down a little bit, so people could just take a step back, just concentrate on learning your trade at that level, and then in 5 years' time, maybe you move on. I think something like that would improve it. But.
Yeah, I don't know where the answer lies. Obviously many people have looked at it, but I just really think there's a lack of capability of the policing environment to have senior people in that office there, advising, assisting, leading young aspiring police. I know my understanding is a lot of the young people get jack of it because they're not getting that support, not learning, and it just becomes they're stuck in an environment where it's investigations by numbers. It's like joining the dots, and hopefully it all comes to a fine.
You haven't got that experienced person you're aspiring.
Yeah, and they're not having the innovation that I attempted sort of to instill in the whole group, that the group I led, and whether it was a group that just thrown together over the weekend or a group that was with me for a long time,
Talking about your career, where are some of the squads you worked? So you worked as a generalist detective around Newtown, Marrickville?
Yeah, Campsie, Newtown, Marrickville, yeah.
Yeah, and they would have been interesting times.
Yeah. Marrickville in the day was a substation of Newtown, so I went to Newtown and some characters there, Peter Panich and what was her name? Miss Morgan. There was some funny characters there, but a great environment. It was well before Newtown took off and become sort of a bit trendy now.
Yeah. It was a hard
characters.
Hard working class suburb, wasn't it?
It had its fair level of different ethnic groups. Very hard area. Like a lot of the wharfies lived there, and a lot of the tough men and the tough women and were around that area.
Yeah,
great place to work. All different.
You would have got some good policing experience. What inspired you to move on to the squads or specialists?
I don't know. I did want to sort of just have, again, I think it's just the inquisitive nature of me. I wanted just to go and do some different stuff. You can only do so many break and enters and car thieves, and I had significant success in that level of investigation. I was always, I don't know whether it was luck, I was always pulling people up and they just happened to have guns and got drugs and stuff in the car. I don't know where that ability comes from. I think if you just pull up enough, you find them.
I was going to say that if you're keen enough and get out there, I always laugh when people go, "Oh, it's a quiet area."
No.
There's no quiet area.
It's just lazy police. That's what a quiet area is.
You can stir stuff up if you need to.
There wouldn't be a square kilometre in Sydney that's not full of crime. You just got to find it.
You're not looking hard enough if you can't find it.
Exactly right. But going to the squads, it was. We had to go to 21 Division in those days for a training line that we had.
Describe the role of 21 Division for people that haven't heard of it.
It went through a couple of different things. It was a bit of a head-kicking thing to start with. They'd go out to the pubs, or if there was issues, But it got to the stage when I was there, people were so conditioned in relation to it. You only just walk into a pub. It had a rough name, whether it be anywhere in the wider metropolitan area, and they were having problems. They would send us out there, and we very sneakily had these unmarked blue cage trucks, paddy wagons. The only thing it didn't have was a police sign on the top. But we just pull up there, back into the door, and you walk in there and just nod to people, and they'd get in the truck.
Yeah. Because the reputation.
The reputation, I don't know what it was. You didn't even have to lay a hand on anyone.
Yeah.
But we did a whole raft of things. A lot of gaming back then. The 21 Division was looking at SP bookies and the like. Illegal casinos and again, not a thing for me. it's a matter of people's opinion whether it's a crime or not. It's more of tax collecting thing, but they did a whole lot of stuff. I remember there was a couple of murders in the city where we got deployed, which was a good thing. We got deployed to do a whole lot of canvassing and stuff like that. I remember there was a gentleman robber doing banks in the city, so we got deployed to that.
Yeah.
So you got to do a bit of a mixed bag in the early sort of specialist world,
Yeah, and it was to deploy wherever it
had a
was
group
needed.
of people
and
to go
that's
and do
before
stuff.
we had a lot of like the riot squad and different things like that. So
we were all just training, detectives who were going through that area. I think it was about a 3-month stint there.
Yeah,
and then I think if you did sort of well, and they thought something of you, they gave you offered you a spot to go to a squad. I went to the licensed dealer squad, which was quite enlightening.
They had some interesting characters and cases.
It was probably the best squad you could go to.
Yeah.
Because you sort of, in terms of criminals, a pawn shop back in those days, which is a lending, money lender, pawn shop, was like a honeypot to all those bees out there. Every crook in Sydney at some stage went to a pawn shop because they were all the criminals, the armed robbers, the war were chasing money. They had, were pawning stuff and then they'd go out and blow it at the races and they'd have to go get more money. They'd be robbing banks. They'd be doing drugs. So every criminal in Sydney
went there. All the hot gear came through the pawn.
Yeah. Very regularly,
Yeah.
And that was our job to police those. But not only that, in the metal industry and the jewellery and the gold and the precious metals, and we had the metal squad, we had the pawnbroker squad within the licensed dealers, gold squad. So it was quite a good insight.
They were good old style crooks too. Used to with the metals and stolen copper wire and
and in the jewellery, they were all the cat burglars, the safe breakers, and that all led on to bigger things. They become the armed robbers. They were the safe breakers. As I said, they were the murderers.
Yeah,
they were everywhere. But every crook went to the only people in general terms are really down and outers went to pawn shops or criminals.
Yeah.
There's only the two lots. There was nothing in the middle of it. You pick them straight up, And heroin was quite a scourge back in the early days then. And so all the heroin addicts were doing home breakings and turning up at pawn shops.
With this carrying they
got a big Canon SLR camera, which had bayonet fittings. I could just take that lens off for us, mate. They're wrestling with it, on the ground trying to get this. Police, come here, stupid, yeah. But again, and that sort of led to a lot of drug work, because they're all, all drug addicts bringing property in there.
And the heroin the trade at that time, that was fueling the majority of crime, wasn't it? The heroin addictions and
the heroin addiction was all the majority of crime. A lot of the armed robberies were drug related.
Yeah, that's true.
And there was a lot of armed robberies back in the day there. Basically, you'd have your heroin addicts going from doing house busts to what do you call assault and robberies.
Yeah.
Then graduating up to the quite large armed robberies. Even the big major crooks were affected by heroin.
Yeah.
The major crooks from around Sydney that are doing the big armed robberies were heroin affected, or at least some of the group was. And they were doing it solely for supplying the addiction. And
where did you do time at the Crime Authority, National Crime Authority?
Yeah, where did we go after that on this ride from the licensed dealer squad? No, we had the family law court bombings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now
a couple of us got seconded from the whole big group out of the CIB got seconded over to the family law court bombings, and
that was huge. I remember when I started in the police, we had to do guard duty around the judges,
the different judges from the family law court,
and that was you got rostered on regularly. But good result, long time down the track. But that would have been an interesting case to work on. It
was very interesting. I was only young at the time, and I worked with another colleague of mine, Paddy Hamill, and we were tasked to doing surveillance. Whilst we only had very limited surveillance capability on and Warwick, it was almost, if we had the resources, we would have had him. But if we had the resources, we would have followed him 24/7. But that wasn't the case. But he was after many investigative processes on any number of suspects. It was a very difficult investigation to conduct. Like every person, we had to interview every person that has sort of common attachments to different judges that were actually either killed or bombed or whatever.
Who's got a grudge against a family law court judge? That's not a small list.
And you go in to interview. We all had large group. Might have 200, 300, 400 names each. We had to go and track down, find, interview. So we go along, and I don't think anyone said they wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Obviously, there was a problem with the family law court back then. I don't know. Most of them said, if I had the chance, I would have.
Yeah, so
that arsehole, I would have killed him.
That makes it hard, doesn't it?
It cost me my family, cost me all my money, cost me everything, and these men hated it.
Yeah,
hated the family law court. Yeah,
I'm not sure if it's balanced out now, but I know.
I don't know.
Those days, like people they come away bitter. And, so when you're looking at the motive, it's hard to. Well, maybe that person is capable, but the person that was eventually convicted of
Lenny Warwick.
He's a strange person.
I remember searching his house, and I remember finding all this stuff, a bit odd, and it was just. If the technology was available in the day, we had him. That's the frustrating thing about it. Him to be arrested and charged so late in life, when these people
lost their lives,
and he's been out running around, just being quite an abusive man, quite an evil person. We got to know him a fair bit, just from watching him and interviewing him. Over
just an aggressive, nasty piece of work. Wasn't it?
Just evil.
Yeah. Okay, so that was an interesting one, but what's the role of the National Crime Authority? How did you land there, and what was that all about?
Well, when the Bomb Task Force was winding down, they were looking for staffing at the National Crime Authority to do a number of jobs, and they were in relation to international drug. Snapper Cornwall, Barry Richard Bull, and all those people were importing large amounts of cannabis and hash out of Asia, Golden Triangle up there in Thailand, and up down into New South Wales.
Yeah.
So it's a great job.
Yeah.
Because they had, it seemed to us to have, how good's this? They got infinite resources.
Compared to the,
compared to the police, we had nothing.
With the police, can we work overtime? No, you can't. The National Crime Authority, no, away you go.
Here's your Celica sports car. Off you go, mate.
Off you go.
And it was good. It was a great way to work. We got you worked with interstate police. One of my partners down there was a dear friend who was from the Queensland Police.
Yeah.
He was my detective sergeant, and there was some great characters worked there, and they all came from all over Australia.
And the nature of the work, was it surveillance or the tracking? What was
everything? We had a surveillance group with us, and I was part of that as well. There was all the investigative processes, tracking people around, where they're doing, what they're doing. Electronics were starting to come, well and truly coming into the game.
Yeah.
In terms of phones, and that was not as prevalent as it got to, but we had a little bit of that because we had the first stuff and had the money to do it. And being able to fly different places around the world and do the work over there. We had police, right throughout, travelling to Europe and Asia and
so it was mainly working on major
drug dealers, major drug importers, great work. Yeah.
And they get, if you catch them, there's high consequences, isn't it? They do a big sting.
Back in the day, they were all life sentences, the life for large commercial quantities came in. They got, good sentences.
Yeah. So the stakes were high.
Stakes were high, yeah. Okay. But again, there's big money. These people just had money all over the place, all up through Europe and different parts of the world. So they did very well out of it.
A lot of your career and what people know you when you profile organised crime.
Yeah.
How would you describe organised crime in Australia?
Well, from a definition point of view, you're not an organised crime group unless you have that really strong links. A larger group of people, not three or four, say a larger group of people who are somewhat hierarchical structured too,
That's the importance of it, that someone's pulling the strings from
You have
above.
someone pulling the strings. It's like any police squad, you have the superintendent, you have 4 or 5 inspectors, then you have some sergeants, and then you have your gophers, and then you blah, blah, it's probably a derogatory word, gophers, but you have people of lesser ranks with lesser responsibilities and doing the more mundane sort of work, and that's an organised crime group.
Right.
And if from a police squad, if they're doing police work, that's one thing. But if the whole resolve of the group is crime, whether it be drugs or money laundering or whatever, that's organised crime.
And do you, and this is something that I know you copped flack for, but as you said at the start of the podcast, there's shouldn't be a problem with telling the truth, but ethnically based crime groups.
Well, mate, if it looks like a duck, it's a duck. Like, for God's sake, I'm sick to hear. Again, this is people just hiding their heads in the sand.
If it looks like a duck and it's quacking, it's a duck.
Fair chance.
Okay.
Every chance in the world, and unless you call it out, and this is what people don't get. Well, the people get it.
Yeah,
it's the do-gooders and the hierarchy in government don't.
Yeah.
When we set up the Middle Eastern Organised Crime Squad, our greatest fans was the Middle Eastern community.
Yeah, explain that, because I've heard you say that
before. In all the ethnic groups, and I've been in charge of a number of ethnically based crime squads, Southeast Asian organised crime, blah, blah. The most prolific victims of that sort of crime are the Arabic people.
Right, so they're preying on their own.
They prey on their own. The first thing they do, and the Asians do it, they prey on their own. Yeah. It's like if you go back to Cabramatta, when you would have heard, and it was quite well publicised, that all the Smithfield, Fairfield, Parramatta shop owners of Vietnamese background were all being stood over and paying huge amounts of money to Vietnamese criminals.
Yeah.
So so we go back to all those groups want their own personal protection. They want to be protected. A lot of them come from environments that are sort of quite not like we know. They're quite corrupt environments. They're quite violent environments, like the Cambodia, Vietnam.
Yeah.
They've been through a whole lot of stuff. A lot of corrupt policing over there, corrupt governments. So they don't really trust the police. But after a while here, once you get to speak to them and integrate yourself within these groups, like they say, the Arabic community here in Australia is absolutely outstanding group of people who at the time were being targeted by scumbag Arabic criminals.
Yeah.
And they were sort of just focusing on them. So what they wanted us to target, because the way the Arabic people think, they're highly embarrassed by the fact that other Arabic people can commit these crimes.
Yeah.
That's a horrible embarrassment to them. I used to have friends in the Arabic community ring up. We'd lock up a whole lot of Arabic crooks, and they'd say, "Please tell us they're not Lebanese, please."
Okay, so
oh, sorry, mate, they are. Yeah, get over it.
Yeah.
But they were our greatest fan. They wanted this group, and the Asians were the same.
Yeah, and I think that
the good people wanted it.
If the public understood that, so it's because it's easy.
The public did understand that, and it was never a problem until someone in government or some do-gooder, left-wing person said, "Oh, that's wrong. You're naming them."
You're specifically targeting.
We actually did a job. I remember doing a job with the boss of the drug squad, where we started ethnic profiling.
Yeah,
people travelling on domestic airplanes.
Right.
Yeah. So, and it was the duck.
Yeah.
This person turns up at the airport, pays cash for a ticket. 99% is Asian.
Right.
99% is around the 20 to 25 years old.
Yeah.
He's carrying a little bit of baggage, and he's coming back the same day. So they didn't pick up on anything except the fact that he was Asian.
Right. Whereas I see what you're saying
but again, it was a duck.
Yeah.
Because that's the person that was doing it. And so we used to target them.
Yeah.
And again, 95% of the time, we were actually exactly right, But the only thing they were concerned about is that we actually said one of them, one of those criteria was Asian. I think there was about 10 criteria, and one was Asian.
Yeah.
And they were all Asian.
That's where
That's how they're moving drugs throughout the country.
And that's where you cross the do-gooder line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah. So with the Middle Eastern organised crime, because that's something that, and I think just before I move on to that, with the Asian crime, I've always found that people think there's not a lot of Asian crime, but that's because you talked about the distrust they have of police from the environments they came. They tended not to report crimes, like the extortions. When you had a kidnapping, they wouldn't go to the police because they thought the police would be involved in it.
That's right. Well, that's what they were used to back in their own country,
Yeah, so I can understand how the communities, when that trust is built up within the certain ethnic communities, they would feel safer knowing that there's people out there that are trying to help them.
Well, and had that understanding. But with that, there's some very important things you need to do. And one of them you might think is a laugh. You get your fridge magnets made.
Yeah.
Right?
Explain.
Meox fridge magnets.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And we hand them out all over the place. But in that...
I didn't know you did that, Ken.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It was outstanding. And you go into all the crooks' house, they all had them.
Did you get an award for that? Did you come up with that?
No. I didn't. Well, someone else came up with, one of the kids in the office came up with that, but it worked,
Yeah.
And because in that had a letter, a phone number, which was totally answered by Arabic-speaking people. In my office.
Okay,
so they could talk, and the message on the fridge magnet said, "Contact us."
Okay,
and Arabic speaking people.
Again, well, that's innovative, right?
Yeah, and so they had someone to talk to. We got great information through there. They didn't want to leave their names, but there was a place, their own specific place. They had ownership of their own problem. What I'm saying, everyone could have run Crime Stoppers or rung the local police, but these people had their own police, and that's what they were so proud of.
And I would imagine if someone came in and English is not their first language into a police station and trying to complain and or report a crime. There's a good chance that they'd be, I don't understand, and just the miscommunications, and that they'd give up. So something like that, I can see the benefits of it there. But not just the fridge magnets. Didn't they go beyond that? Because weren't the crooks getting Meox number plates?
But they go. But that's how stupid they are. They're just dumb bastards.
Let's put in a target on.
It's like arrest me on number plates. They did that, and around the Greenacre Bankstown area, we used to just target that car all the time, and whoever drove it, I think they just set mates up and just say, take my car for a drive, knowing they're going to get locked up.
They're going to get pulled over
by the cops
if they're driving that. That was Meox the first group, and what was the group that Bob Inkster was running prior to?
They had under Strikeforce Gain.
That's right.
Now, Strikeforce Gain encapsulated a whole lot of specific crimes, that were committed by different Arabic people.
Yep.
Some of them were crime groups, like the Darwish group, which is Adnan Darwish, Muhammad Ali Darwish, and all those people. Were in that family group. Not saying all of them were criminals, but they had a family group which under them, say Adnan Darwish, was a number of lieutenants and then drug dealers and then standover people. So they were specific organised crime groups. They were fighting at the time with the Razaks.
Yeah.
And that was just a stupid fight over someone married into the family of the Razaks or vice versa, and they just had a fallout. There was just no reason for it.
Crazy how it escalites, isn't it? There's just no conflict.
And they were shooting at each other. And so, is it the young Asian chappie that was murdered up in by the Dib group up in Tilapia Street?
Yep.
There was all these different investigations came under the umbrella of Gain, and Bobby Inkster ran that and ran it quite effectively. That some wonderful results. It was nothing new. We had been saying, Bob and other people, that we needed a Middle Eastern specific crime squad.
Well, I think that what happened with Meox when it came in, what I liked was the approach that working in as a major crime investigator, we're reactive. Like the crime occurs and then...
Well, Game was reactive to crimes that took place.
Yeah, but Meox changed the landscape because you became proactive as well as reactive, and that, I think, set the standard for good police practice. Do you want to explain what was done there?
Well, what you needed to look at, and if you have a look across the whole crime environment, you had... Again, if you look at the structure of the organised crime group, at the top you've got the bosses, and then you've got the lieutenants and then sergeants and then these people running around madly, dealing drugs on the street and doing all, assaulting people and doing all that. So it all intermingles. But to deal with that, you just can't hit at one level.
Yeah.
What you've got to do is there's 4 things you've got to do. You've got to, at the top, you have your best investigators targeting those people at the top. Then under that, they'll probably do the top and the lieutenants. And it comes down to the numbers of policing you have.
Yeah.
So in the middle there, you've got the people running around doing business. So what you have to have is another group of police in there with different skill sets, and these were our tag operatives that went into there. They were doing drug street buys and
the lower level stuff.
Lower level, and taking that. And then under that, you had the higher patrol and your general duties. They was across the board support. So if we wanted to go to you and your mate as senior detectives wanted to go to a job, you didn't have to take other detectives. You could take a couple of the general duties blokes to help you out, watch your back, help you with your tasks and all that sort of stuff. So we had this assistance there. And then the higher patrol would come along and do that sort of work. But that also, you could target them. You'd have another target list for the next group you're going to work on. Yeah. So they would just go and target those people for anything any offence they could get on them. So by the time you moved your resources to deal with those, you had a really good understanding of how they operated and the like. Yeah. And so you had these higher patrol people were sort of paving the way to the next job with intelligence-based policing put over the top of it. But it's like, you've got to use the analogy like in a footy game, in the rugby, say, where if you disregard your reserve graders and your lower and your juniors, if you disregard them in rugby, you don't end up with any first graders. Okay. But it's conversely in organised crime, if you disregard the underlinks and the lower graders and the juniors, you end up with a shitload of first graders. And that's the problem. Yeah. So you've got to deal with all levels at one hit. Otherwise, you see a lot of states, they just deal with the top level, and as soon as they go over there, this one's up there.
But it's changing the thinking of squad, that squad mentality. When I talk squads, the major crime squads, that actually proactively going out there. Because I was at Gang Squad before Raptor was formed, and it was a bad period to be at Gang Squad because there was so many shootings. There was the airport situation. In fact, that the night of the airport when the Comancheros and Hells Angels came to blows at Sydney Airport. I'd been out all night. I was on call, and there'd been 6 or 7 houses shot up that night, and then the airport thing happened. At Gang Squad at the time, we were set up without the proactive way of getting out there that Raptor had. So we were waiting for the crimes to happen. Yeah,
you're going with a blindfold on your head.
Yeah, and then, okay, we're going to investigate this. But MEOC sort of changed the landscape. They showed that it could be done hold it, we're going to get on the front foot here. We're not going to just react after the crime's been committed. We're going to target people and stir things up.
Yeah, you've got to have the different layers to be able to, to pave the way for the next job, but B, to keep a lid on stuff before it escalates. Put a lid on that until we can get our senior investigation, because it's all about numbers of people you can have. You can't.
It's not unlimited.
It's not unlimited, so you've got to use what you got. So if you can actually utilise all the different skills of the whole of the police force in all the different sections and have them under one roof and spear them in. It's rather get away from reactive policing or reactive crime fighting and actually have reactive problem fighting. Yeah. The problem is a multitude of crimes, but you've got to get onto the problem rather than just the individual crime.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a good change in the way that we go after major crime. And I know I borrowed the MEOC's proactive team when I was doing the murder of Terry Falconer and all the spin-offs from that job, but we couldn't keep up with it. But we had people that were really concerned that we're going to do some hits like murders, and MEOCs were there because...
Well, and the good thing about it, you're having this, you'd have a team of general duties people who would never have been exposed to this in their entire careers. And would never in the future get exposed to it. And when they leave there, they've that much experience they've gotten from, and training they've got from A, from the higher patrol, but B, from the tag operatives who run by inspectors and detective sergeants, and then you got by the senior detectives and detective inspectors. So they're all part of one team. They're not separate sections. All our meetings were just one.
Yeah.
All our groups gets together. We're all one. Whilst they bring. What I'm saying, have a group with different skill sets. Whilst I name them like senior detective and tag.
Highway patrol. We look at it from detectives and go, well, we've got the skills. What have you got? But highway patrol,
they're gold.
If a detective pulled over a car, you and I'd look at it and go, okay, that's a car. Yeah. Like, is it registered?
It's got 4 wheels, hopefully. Here.
Highway patrol.
I don't even know. Yeah. How do you know if it's registered or not? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
The person on the radio tells you.
They haven't got the stickers anymore. No. But highway patrol would pull over and go, well, that tyre's defective.
Go through them like salts.
And all of a sudden you've got control of the situation.
Or if you and your mate, your detective mate are out in the street and you see a target that we want to interact with, you have a highway patrol bloke. What he does, he sits 150 yards up the road and just watches you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you say, oh, you come in, or if what happens in the organised crime, well, they have contacts and other criminals might turn up. Well, you got someone in your back, all the time.
Yeah,
and we used to do it in search warrants. The general duties would just shut the whole street down.
Yeah, so it was a good way of approaching things.
Yeah, as I said, I call it a problem model, not a crime model.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because run that past me again. You call it?
I call it a problem solving model.
Yep.
Where you're not investigating. The problem is a multitude of crimes and criminals. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So rather than have this attitude, we're just going to target these criminals.
Yeah.
Where you only target 2 or 3, and we only have the ability to do a few at a time. You just target the whole problem. And then that gives you take that away and you at least work on another problem before that rises again.
And the problem, and people would understand this because I think they remember it from how it was reported in the media, all the drive-by shootings. And that it was getting out of hand, and that brings a lot of heat down on the crooks. That if the public are going, well, this is not on, and when the idiots let off, round after round into a house and no idea who's in there.
Yeah, well, that happened down at Chullora when one of what family was that? They were the Razak family. One of the young ladies was just laying on the lounge, was killed.
Killed. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we might have a break now. When we get back, I'm going to talk about a couple of your investigations. Recovering the rocket launcher.
Yeah. Funny times.
You laugh. I laughed. I was reading about it the other day. I remember it when it occurred, and it made me laugh. But okay, we'll talk about that. Some of the specific gangs and other cases that you've worked on, and because you're such an experienced police officer, I'm going to throw a few questions at you about policing and the good, the bad, and the ugly, and what could be done. So we'll be back shortly.
Got it, mate.